Okay, so we just need to go through the antitrust policy notice real quickly. We've all seen it many times before, as Shane says, and so we just need to make sure that we're following all of the antitrust policies that are posted on the Linux Foundation's homepage at www.linuxfoundation/antitrust policy. So if you have any questions, go ahead and take care of that and take a look at that. All right, next screen. We're going to talk about welcoming our new chairs. We've got the new specification chair. That's myself. And then for education, we have Martin. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Martin, do you want to go to slide 5?
Yeah, that might be.
Sounds like he's on slide 5.
Okay. Right.
There we go.
Thank you. Yes, okay, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Martin Yagi from First Light Fusion. I'm actually the IP manager here. In terms of open source license compliance, I first got into that about 10 years ago when I was at Cisco and was trained as one of their open source specialists. And actually checked this morning, the first time I subscribed to an OpenChain mailing list was almost exactly 6 years ago. And I think I've been pretty much involved at least in reviewing and commenting on education material since then. So I'm reasonably aware of pretty much everything that's gone on in the education group during that time, even if because of timings and stuff, I didn't necessarily fully engaged all of that time. So looking forward to stepping up and being the chair and helping the work group out for the next year.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, are you here? Mark from Nokia has been elected as the telco chair, and he's serving his third term as telco chair. So we'll now go on to get to the education work group. And Martin, can you see that slide?
Yep.
The slides aren't advancing for me. Is that a me problem? We're still on the first slide. Is anyone else?
Yeah, same here.
This one?
Okay, let's...
It might be frozen.
That's a shame because it was working perfectly fine for me. Probably means I need to...
Is it
basic next steps?
Is that on a reasonable slide? Okay, good. Right. So I'll try to keep this as short as possible in that case. So yeah, I know that Shane in particular is interested in refreshing the 2 Linux Foundation courses that we have, and I'm certainly very supportive of that. I guess some of my agenda is kind of try to get a bit more kind of cohesion through a lot of the things which we've got in the education area. So this is why I'm kind of trying to link things like the open source policy template in the maturity model. So for example, if we took the open source template, policy template, there is a tab in that document that talks about training with different roles and what sort of things should be trained for each person. So I think it would be great if there we could somehow link or reference to education materials that we already have that would support that training that's required. And that will also help to identify any gaps that we may have. And similarly for the maturity model, you know, the maturity model by itself is great, but it's also, let's say a company wants to move up from capability level 1 in one area to capability level 2. Well, how do they do that? Perhaps there's some education material we already have that kind of supports an organization in terms of making that move and stepping up the maturity model. So that's kind of my agenda. But of course, it's also community contribution led. So this is mainly my idea.
Next slide.
That's what I'm trying to do.
There you go. Just say next and I'll channel them.
Doesn't seem to be moving. loading at all.
Wow.
That worked. Slide 2.
Oh, great.
Good job.
So I decided to take one for the team, and I actually redid the Linux Foundation LFC 193 and 194. And I think pretty much they're still basically relevant. You know, they're well rated. I looked through all of the different review comments that are on there as well, and nothing says anything bad. So there isn't very much kind of like to take away in terms of like third-party feedback. That's, you know, this is obviously wrong. They didn't say this, this kind of stuff. But there are obviously, you know, I'm sure there are opportunities for making at least minor updates and improvements. So this is just the kind of picky stuff which I noticed whilst going through these things. I don't think we necessarily makes a big point in terms of going through those today. So I think we'll come back to these anyway in a future meeting. And with that, I shall try desperately to change to the next slide. Did that work? Are we seeing a new slide?
Yes, that worked. Yes.
Ooh, thank you.
You're on a roll.
Great. Yeah, so some other things that I noticed, that the training course on GitHub is not in Markdown format, so we should probably look to move to Markdown as well. Actually, the 194 course Word document, I noticed, has some comments and changes made by you, Mary, that actually were never reflected into the online course content. I'm not sure why that is, but we should probably go through and confirm those changes in the Word document first, and then create a markdown of that, and then any further changes after that. So from what I recall, the education group did go through and revise a lot of the training slides, probably towards the middle of last year. So there may be some improvements to roll back into the 2 training courses as well. So I'll start having a bit of a look at that to see if they're still properly in step. And definitely in terms of translations, we have English and for some reason an Italian version of the training slides, which is better than just English, but still there's plenty of scope here for getting further translations into other languages. But of course, it's better to do that once we've made whatever updates we want to make. And with that, I'll see, have we managed to move on to slide 4?
Yes.
Thank you. So yeah, so my idea right now with specific actions is firstly engage with the Linux Foundation's education people, just to see if there were any improvement suggestions that they may have, which might be things like, oh, our platform now supports this or that, maybe you can make use of it. That kind of thing. They may have some good advice, and obviously we need to fix the broken link. Also, I know that, for example, Continental were using the LFC 193, I think, as a required course for part of their internal open source program. So I'd like to reach out to them and see if they have any suggestions for improvements as well. If anybody else has any improvement suggestions, then please obviously get in touch and we can take that into account, and then start by presenting the findings and suggestions in, say, the next full meeting in a month's time. So that's basically my plan for now. Any questions for me? That's the end of the education stuff.
Sounds like it's all quiet.
Oh, okay, I see there was something in the chat, but interestingly, I'm not sure we can actually get to that. Okay. I have to start. Oh, okay, someone's given some advice from before. Right, in that case, unfortunately, I have to leave for another appointment now, so I'm going to have to leave you, Chris, with the fun of driving PowerPoint and Zoom, if that's all right.
That's fine. I just have to figure out the new system here.
I wish you well, and yeah, have a
Thank you
good
very
end
much.
to the rest of the meeting. Thanks a lot, and bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, Martin. Okay. Next, I guess Mark is not here Are you here, Mark?
Yeah, if we're gonna do the AI compliance piece, I can do that next if that's
Okay.
appropriate.
Can you see the lead slide?
No, not
Oops.
yet. I'm not seeing that.
Okay, this is slide 2. Can you see that?
Yeah, still no.
I just don't see why this is not changing for us. Let's see here. Okay. Does anybody have any help for us? Let's see here. Let me share this now.
Do you want me to try?
To drive? Sure. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. This wants me to send it to my cloud account. I don't know what. Let's see. Upload and attach. No. Yeah, if you can try to share, that would be great. And let's see here.
Sure, is that showing?
That's it.
Yeah, it's showing. Okay. All right. So, hi, I'm Dave Marr. I'm here to actually give a quick overview of what's been done so far on the AI work group, and also the point at which we're now, which is essentially opening us up for a 6-week comment period. So, this particular AI work group, we've been working at this for quite a while, over a year, and we've been trying to look at different types of benchmark standards that are in the space, as well as some key regulations. And it's been really hard to harmonize these things, and I think that's the challenge here. Within a supply chain, there's a bunch of things that need to be transmitted from tier to tier efficiently, as we all know from the 5230 experience. And it's not clear that we're actually going to go for a formal specification standard here, but what we want to provide some guidance as to, in the context of AI, what should be transmitted as to promoting efficiency and reducing friction within that. So let me go to the next slide here. Does that show as the next slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So where we landed was, we found something that's actually quite simple. We basically took the format of 5230, with the various verification materials and the guidance, and we up-leveled that into some broad manageable pieces. Let me see if I can flip that. Okay, so there's about 10 parts to this approach. Okay, so there's actually some definitions, and none of those definitions should be a surprise to anyone. We certainly tried not to make any unique definitions, and where we could, we leveraged existing ISO definitions. In some cases, we also looked at IEEE, but ultimately we chose words that should be intuitively understood. But the 10 parts is like 5230. You have to have a policy, and so you have the policy, an AI policy around how AI gets handled within an enterprise. And of course, consistent with 5230, there should be some type of awareness, whether that's training or some other internal communication method. We're keeping this very high level because what's lacking, in our opinion, right now is some guidance within the industry as to what's a good place to start. These specifications and these other standards are so robust. Honestly, it's actually kind of hard to, find what is the first scaffold one needs to actually work on and attain. And we are proposing that this might be a good candidate for that. So again, one piece is provide a policy, make sure people are aware of it. Another piece is provide the right degrees of confidence or the right fields of confidence, like security, safety, privacy, supplier management. All of these are cross-disciplinary things. Exports probably belongs on the list too. If a company is operating across regions. So, all these different disciplines need to get pulled in. And so there should be some documented list of what those roles are, the responsibilities, and what those competencies are. Somebody needs to also be in charge of keeping that document up to date. And then the third piece is going to be around awareness. Okay, so I hinted at that earlier, but it's like, how, if you provide training, how well is that taken in? How well is that? What's the evidence around, assessing the awareness of those program participants? And then program scope, just like 5230. There might be some groups that are ahead, more ahead than others across an enterprise, or you can actually say this is going to apply across my entire enterprise. But the scope should be something that you determine and you actually convey potentially. So if I'm doing business with one part of some mega corporation, I do want to know, if they're professing adherence to this specification or not. License obligations. There's a whole plethora of different licenses across AI models and data sets. And, that's part of the challenge. But there should be a way that is documented, a procedure that says, this is how we are handling upstream reviews and downstream reviews. This is how we're adhering to these obligations and the restrictions and exercising these rights. So, and then the sixth piece is around transparency. This one's a little tricky because there are so many different frameworks that are even evolving right now around what needs to be disclosed to downstream recipients. And so the way that we are framing our requirement here is, we're not going to advise you on the laws. We're not going to advise you on what your risk profile should be. We're just going to say, you should have a documented procedure to review and document the transparency measures that you have chosen to undertake. And, to the extent that you have chosen a risk profile that's implicit in those decisions, that's yours to make. Just be in a position to review and document those measures that you have chosen to undertake. The seventh one is access. So you need to make sure that there is some reasonable way for third parties to be able to reach out to you and say, hey, I got this from you, and maybe I have a compliance question, but there should be a entry point for that query to get made. And then another big one here is effectively resourcing those roles. And for that, it's like, who are the people in charge of different functions? And are they properly staffed? Is there adequate funding being provided for them to be able to execute those roles? There's a lot of this inside of ISO IEC 42001. We actually do encourage people to take a hard look at that. And to the extent that we have put together something here, we deem our approach here to be complementary to that, and certainly not to supersede what 42001 might be indicating. And then when it comes to what is in a AI bill of materials, there's a lot of material outside of this project on this issue. And the way that we're landing on this one is just have a document procedure for how you're going to be identifying and tracking and reviewing those components of an AI system. That, of course, includes model data sets and weights, but there might be a broader set than that, or there might be a subset of that. But whatever that bill of materials might be, given what is actually being distributed, have a procedure for identifying those items and the safekeeping of that. And the last piece of our framework here is around governance. So AI systems should be handled within a context of a lifecycle management framework, and there should just be a governance role that is provided to manage that throughout. And that, of course, should be documented. And there's many ways to do that. We have a number of different references to other authorities, other literature out there, and we're really trying to not to create anything new. We're trying to create something that is the distillation of a great place for people to start in their AI bill of materials and compliance journey. We're starting now this comment period for 6 weeks, and as you can see, we're looking to close this out on August 18th. So please go ahead and take a look at those materials. Please provide comments, and the AI work group will review all those comments. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is just a screenshot, and you can use that QR code there to access that link as well. But yeah, we are now entering this phase of comments, and we'll take those comments, review those, and from those comments, we will try to resolve things and consider the next steps that are appropriate for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good job.
Thank you. I should say that this was a process that was co-led by Matthew Crawford and myself. He wasn't able to join today in terms as co-chairs, but there's been active participation by a number of different companies in this process, and we're always looking to grow this. So if there's interest in other companies joining the work group, please reach out. Thanks. Chris,
Okay.
do I pass it to you?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm chairing the specification work group, which currently consists of the software licensing specification as well as the software assurance specification. And those two specifications, we chose them to attack first because they're linked together so closely and so intricately that you can't really have one without the other. So go ahead. We also reviewed these specifications, and we need to have a periodic review to confirm that that to the ISO folks that 5230 is still relevant and is being used. And I think we've got plenty of supporting elements for that. So the governing board had previously confirmed, and we had a formal motion passed on that we can initiate the ISO periodic review of that. What's more important probably is that we're have had over the last 2 years community proposals for future updates to both the 5320 and 18974, even though 18974 has not been released long enough to really require an update, but we found that there were a few areas in it that needed to be addressed. So we're going to go ahead and we proposed to the board, and the board accepted our suggestion that we work that. So we're going to start working on that as getting the changes incorporated into those specifications as soon as the periodic review is finished with 5230. Next. So we already talked about the 2-year period where we collected and sorted through all of the comments. We had a 6-month public comment period after that, and we received some comments, and we went through at the end of the 6-month time and updated the comments behind the scenes. And then we went into a 3-month freeze period before this last executive board meeting. So we showed the results of the what we wanted to change in both of those specifications, and the steering committee approved that on June the 25th, and we're going to release those updates sometime in 2026, really pending the conclusion of the ISO review. So we're going to talk about in the next 11 slides, and don't worry, it's not a death by PowerPoint. These are red line changes that we made to certain sections of each one of the specifications. And the primary change in those standards is just adjusting the confirmation of conformance from 18 months to 12 months. So the board agreed that we should make them both consistent and do it annually rather than once every 18 months. So that'll be going out. The rest of the changes were pretty much just cleaning up the spec to make it track well. So if you want to go to the next slide.
All right, sorry about that.
That's okay. So we've got details coming up on the next slide, 6 slides. So these are linked right here to the relevant documents that we're going to be talking about. Top link is to the current ISO standard for 5320, published in the year 2020. And the next one is a link to the next generation draft, which we kept separate in our GitHub repository, so that we always had the baseline as published version that was frozen, and then we had the this markdown version where we went through and looked at changes. And basically, what we're showing here is on the left is what the spec looks like now today, and on the right-hand side of the screen with the red arrow pointing toward it is how it's kind of changed. And what we did is we kind of condensed and made some changes to the noted sections in there: 3.1.4, 1.1, and 1.3. And so that became the program scope, the policy, and the awareness. So we were trying to just get this sorted so that people could understand by looking at 3.1 exactly where we were going. We gave them the scope, the policy, and the awareness, and those are 2 things that Dave just talked about a few minutes ago with the AI that they were looking at. Then on relevant tasks in section 3.2, we wanted to make sure that we added competence in there because there needed to be some clause in there about the individual competencies. In 3.3, we were looking at, okay, what content review and approval is needed. And so we needed to look at the bill of materials, the license obligations, and the license compliance. So we stacked those things up based on all the comments that we received to give it a little bit more order. And you can see the same thing with the compliance artifact creation and delivery. We just we pretty much just made a few minor changes in it, but they were just contextual editorial changes. And so 3.5 and 3.6 basically very similar, just minor changes. Next. So in section 2, the only thing we changed is we just changed the way of the manner of wording on identified licenses in section 2.2, and to make it easier to read and easier to understand based on comments that we received during the comment period. Windows 11, no, I do not want to do that. Let's put that. Oops, was that on your screen?
No, I'm not seeing an artifact. It looks on my side, I don't see anything different.
Oh dear, what did I do? Okay, here we go. So you can read those. It was just very simple wording changes in there to make it a little bit easier to digest. Next. In the software bill of materials area 2.7, we changed it from referring to SPDX. We don't want to get specifically tied into and saying there's only one software bill of materials, because Cyclone DX has also taken a big chunk of the market. So we want to make our specification agnostic and just call it software bill of materials instead of SPDX. And so we took the definition of SPDX out of that paragraph and gave it a more generic description. And that was basically but we did reference, for an example, SPDX as the project that came out of the Linux Foundation, just as a reference. So it says and that's why we put the tail sand that's on there, regardless of this. So specification that's used, it should be followed to complete the profile for the intended use case. Next. In 3.41, compliance artifacts up there on the left-hand side in the current 5320 version, we changed that based on comments to try and streamline it a little bit, make it easier to read and understand. We changed both the 3.4.1.1 and 3.4.1.2 on the verification materials that were required. And then we put we changed up the language a little bit in the rationale, because it's not just commercial efforts that we're worried about, but it's everybody's efforts, whether you're an open source project or a commercial one. We want to make sure that that all of the verification materials are adequately prepared. So that'll support companies using it as well as open source. Next. And then on duration, here's where we got to talking about the conformance validation and registration procedures. And we just changed it to a simple statement that said a program that is conformant with this version of the specification will have a review period every 12 months. End of story. And that way it doesn't leave anybody to wander off and think they found the right thing and claim. It's just spelled out there. And so next. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the software assurance specification 18974. Those are the links to this ISO standard on the top, the one that's frozen, and then the next generation draft where all the pre-public comments were housed and discussed, and that's on the second link. And all of the open issues have been closed by the spec work group where we submitted this to the board for review. Next. So in here we did a very similar effort to the effort that we did on the software licensing. Is we were just going through the specification with the simple idea that we were going to try to make it easier for people to digest what we were asking for. And so rather than giving them something that said a method for this and a method for that, a method for this, we just said that we wanted to have everything uh, that helps to ensure secure software development by defining and implementing robust methods for, and then giving the actual things that we wanted to see. So we tried to make it less confusing that way. And then at the bottom, we didn't change anything other than some capital security assurance. Next. On paragraph 4.2.1 on access, the top of it was a little difficult to understand. We got a couple of comments on that, so we just went back through it as a team and worked with the commenters to make sure that they were in agreement that this made it simpler and easier to understand. And it's basically, we just want you to maintain a process to effectively receive and, if appropriate, respond to known vulnerability external inquiries. And we want to publicly identify a means by which a third party can inquire about a known vulnerability with respect to a given software offering. And so those are the two things that we want people to be aware of and to be able to accomplish in their processes, is to provide those two things as far as access for known vulnerabilities. Next. Security assurance was similar to the one that I was talking about a few minutes ago, where we had too many apply methods for this and that. And what we tried to do is we tried to use the comments and then conversation with the commenters and with each other to try to distill this down to just a list of what was required to reach this objective, to detect, identify, and document the existence of known vulnerabilities in open source software components on the software bill of materials. So, these types of things will also apply equally, or if not equally, then with good justification for a change by AI when they start generating AIs from their software bills of material. So I think that that's one thing that we kind of need to work together on in this next period, is making sure that we're aware of what's happening in the AI group, and that the AI group maintains close ties with what's going on in the specifications group, because after all, AI systems are really just another IT system that does something different, but then they all did. So I think it's a good reason for us to have synergy and not have to reinvent the wheel just because it's AI and it's not the rest of the applications. So
That makes sense.
next.
Yeah, just agreeing that having some cross pollination, on that makes sense.
Yeah. And we can learn from what y'all are doing. If you come up with a new and better way to do it, we can take a look at that too. So this is again the duration comment, and there was a statement in there that a program that is OpenChain conformant with this version of the spec shall last 18 months from the date of conformance validation was obtained. And what we went back in here and said is a program that is conformant will have a review period every 12 months. And that's just short, simple, and sweet. You don't have to go look at the OpenChain project website and try and figure out where it is. Next. So based on all of this, once we get the work in progress for the ISO periodic review of the licensing specification, we want to start working with our communities. And we want, so what we talked about and the uh, committee validated it was we want to put out a proposed survey and to all of the users of our specifications and see what kind of feedback that we've gotten about the shortfalls and the goodness of using both of these specifications together, because that is our long-term goal, is to have everybody happy with the way that these two specifications, and as and if we bring on additional specifications like for AI or telecom, S-bombs, we can harmonize them so that they play well together, so that people aren't seeing something in one spec and seeing a kind of contradiction in the other specs. So we talked briefly about it and we came up with these example questions. And we'd like everybody to look at those example questions and give us some alternatives of those questions that we could take a look at. The first 5 address the software licensing 5320 specification, and then the next 5 questions starting at the bottom of the left-hand column. No, it starts the right place. I'm very sorry. So those can go back and forth between both of the specifications, because we want to make sure that we're addressing any shortfalls that or disconnects that come up between those two specs. So if you've got any comments or suggestions on those 10 questions, we want to keep it kind of short. We don't want to inundate somebody with a survey questionnaire like comes out of somebody working on a dissertation that's trying to prove their thesis. We wanted to keep it short and sweet so that people will actually give it a little bit of thought and tell us what they think. Anybody have any questions about that?
This makes sense, Chris. Basically, it's like, as to these 2 specifications, are there any shortfalls and are there any disconnects?
That's basically what we want to know, yes. All right.
It sounds appropriate for these questions to be posed.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Next. So it's the obvious question that that Shane's about ready to wrap up the meeting. Do we have any other business to discuss today, other than getting Zoom fixed? Or maybe I could phrase it better and say understanding the new Zoom better. There we go. Okay. Next. All right. Well, since there were no questions, I guess we're at the close of the meeting. So I'll give you 10 minutes of your day back to do something productive. And if you have any questions, please be sure to send us a note. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.